What's up guys, my name is Liam, and today we're going to be breaking down the different versions of the VGN Dragonfly, the F1 Pro, F1 Pro Max, and the latest edition, which is the F1 MOBA edition. So I'm going to do my best to try and help you guys decide which one's going to be the best option for you. Let's check it out. Alright guys, and here we have the three different versions. Over here to the left, we have the F1 Pro. In the middle here, we have the F1 Pro Max. And over here to the right, with the different logo on the back, as you can see here, this is the F1 MOBA edition. And before we get started, I just want to let you guys know really quickly that this video today has been made possible by MetKeys. MetKeys has been sending me these mice out, so MetKeys, thank you very much for that. However, with that being said, everything in this video is going to be my truthful, honest thoughts and opinions on these gaming mice. And just to let you guys know, VGN actually does make just an original Dragonfly F1 that is not 4K compatible. All three of these versions are 4K compatible, but I'm only going to be breaking down the 4K versions today. So starting out, when it comes to the differences between the F1 Pro and the F1 Pro Max, they use a little bit of a different Nordic MCU. I don't really know the exact differences between them. The F1 Pro version comes with a 250 milliamp hour battery in it, so it's half the size of the battery that comes in the F1 Pro Max. The battery that comes in the F1 Pro Max is actually a 500 milliamp hour battery. Now I did weigh the F1 Pro Max before, and I believe it came in like right under 56 grams or something like that. It was really close. And since I first got this mouse, I've actually modified it because the switches that do come in the F1 Pro and the F1 Pro Max, they are the same. I'm not really a huge fan of them. They feel a bit heavy. They're nice and snappy and everything like that, but overall, I just prefer a lighter feeling switch. And one of the biggest things I want to let you guys know about the battery life is they do have a substantial difference in the battery life and how long they last. So if the battery is a big concern and battery life is a big concern for you, that could be one option that I'd go with the F1 Pro Max over the F1 Pro. But just to let you guys know, going back and forth, even if there is a difference between these mice and the performance, it's not something that I noticed too much in my actual gameplay. So other than that, there hasn't really been that much of a difference between these two. And overall, I would say that the biggest difference between these two is going to be the weight difference. And I know a lot of you might be thinking, oh, well, 49, 50 grams to 55, 56 grams, whatever, isn't that big of a deal. And generally that is true and that is the case. However, I feel like with these mice, and we'll go into this in a little bit, I do feel like it actually does have an impact in the overall feeling and balance of the mouse. But aside from that, I truly have enjoyed both versions of this mouse, and I definitely feel like it's a great recommendation. So I'll go ahead and I'll drop the weight right now of the F1 Pro and we'll check out what it's coming in at. All right, so it looks like the F1 Pro with the 250 milliamp hour battery is coming in at approximately 50.7 grams on my scale. And as we're looking to jump into a comparison between the F1 Pro and the F1 Pro Max versus the new MOBA edition, I want to go ahead and let you guys know really quick that I actually did modify this mouse. But one of the biggest changes that I personally wanted to see with this mouse when I got it, again, I love it. I feel like it's great. Not really so much a fan of the stock switches that come in the F1 Pro or the F1 Pro Max. I went ahead and threw some transparent Huano blue shell pink dots in here. And another thing that I actually did to modify the F1 Pro Max is I dropped a 300 milliamp hour battery in it. But overall, I do feel like it makes a difference with just the overall balance of the mouse. But I don't want to go into this too much because I know probably most people aren't going to be looking to mod your mice. If you do have any interest in doing it and you have any questions, you go ahead and reach out to me on my Twitter at AimAdapt. Perhaps I can go a little bit more into depth with you on it there. But with the modded switches and the modded battery in here, let's go ahead and throw that on the scale as well. All right, so it looks like it's coming in at 51 grams with a 300 milliamp hour battery and the Huano blue shell pink dot switches in it. All right, and then next up, when it comes to the MOBA edition, I feel like this is probably the best version of this mouse. And to tell you guys straight up, in my truthful, honest opinion, if I can only buy one of these three mice, I would probably just end up going with the MOBA edition. And the biggest reason for me saying that is this actually does come with Huano switches in it. Now, there are a lot of rumors going around. I even thought it was going to be the Huano blue shell pink dots, but as you guys can see, I'll go and throw up a picture here. I actually did mod this mouse as well. I modded the battery in it, and I'm not sure exactly what they are. They look like they're like a pink shell, pink dot switch. But since I did swap the transparent Huano blue shell pink dot in here, I was comparing them next to each other, and honestly they do feel pretty similar. There's not a whole lot of a difference. I do feel like the Huano blue shell pink dots, just a little bit lighter, a little snappier than these, but truly they're very close to one another. I actually also do favor the side buttons on the MOBA edition. They feel a little bit crispier, a little bit snappier, and I would say a little bit lighter as well. All right, so let's go ahead and drop a sound comparison with the stock F1 Pro, the modded F1 Pro Max with the Huano Blue Shell pink dots in it, and the F1 MOBA edition. All right, so that pretty much wraps up the differences between these three mice. Of course, the MOBA edition and the F1 Pro Max weigh the same as one another. They weigh around 55, 56 grams. And I even did mod the MOBA edition a little bit. I swapped out the battery as well. I actually swapped out a 180 milliamp hour battery. Since I have swapped the battery out in this, I do feel like it has overall made the balance, you know, just a little bit tighter, a little bit better. I'll go ahead and show you guys what the weight's coming in at. So as you guys can see here on the F1 MOBA, it's coming in at 50.7 grams. And the last thing I want to let you guys know about is I'm not really a big fan of the stock skates. They're very hard. They got kind of a weird glide. I ordered a couple copies of the ESPTiger Skates. I honestly have been loving these skates. I feel like it's a huge upgrade, a huge improvement over the stock skates that this mouse originally came at. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about here was the 4K performance. As you can see, I do have the 4K dongle. I have been trying out all three mice with the 4K. It is really easy to switch back and forth between all three mice with the dongle. I actually have a video that I made that shows you how to pair the 4K dongle to the F1 Pro, F1 Pro Max, and the F1 MOBA. So I will go ahead and put a link for that in the description if you guys need any help getting this installed, set up, and put together. But overall, I do want to say that the 4K performance on these mice has been performing like it should be. It's been pretty good. I would definitely recommend, if you are picking up this mouse, one of the biggest things you should be looking out for is picking up that 4K dongle as well. All right, so I've already talked about this mouse in the detail and the shape and all that stuff in a previous video. I'll go and link that down in the description if you guys are interested in checking that out. I also compared this mouse to a bunch of smaller mice in that video, like the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition. I also compared it to the G-Wolves HTX, similar mice in the category. And I have been getting a lot of requests comparing this mouse to other offerings on the market, so let's jump into it. So the number one thing people have been asking me for is to compare the VGN Dragonfly to the Logitech GPro Superlight. And as I pulled up this mouse and I was looking at it side by side, I was like, wow, I'm really shocked by how similar these mice look to one another. They really don't look like they're that different. However, the thing that's really odd about it is they feel pretty different in the hands. So one of the major things that I noticed when comparing these two mice against one another is overall, the VGN Dragonfly, it feels like it has more curves on the bottom of the mouse, and the Logitech G Pro just feels like a flatter and wider mouse overall. And even though the top profile on these mice, they honestly look pretty similar, they feel pretty different. I definitely feel like the Superlight feels like it sticks up a lot higher. It feels like a taller mouse. And even in the comparison, if it doesn't look like that much of a taller mouse, I feel like the sides are flatter and they kind of go straight up a little bit longer. Whereas I feel like on the VGN Dragonfly, it just has more curves. Another difference that I notice is here in the back. I feel like the G Pro Superlight feels a lot longer and bigger in the hands due to the way that it flares out here in the back. And I don't feel like it's as aggressive towards the back of the mouse on the VGN Dragonfly. Really, the only thing I can say about the difference between these two is in the hand, the Logitech G Pro Superlight feels like a much larger mouse just all around. And I can say that the VGN Dragonfly, it does feel like a much smaller, thinner, more curved, and overall just a flatter profile mouse in the palm of your hand. All right, and then next up, when comparing the VGN Dragonfly to the Razer Viper V2 Pro, when looking at the mouse from this angle, when you have the bottoms touching one another, they almost look like they're really similar in size. And another thing that's interesting when you're holding these up is how both of these mice, they definitely feel like flatter profile mice. The one big difference to me, however, is when you have these in the hands, I do feel like the Viper feels flatter towards the rear right here, and I do feel like you get a bit more support on the VGN Dragonfly and a bit more stability. If you're doing any type of a palm grip or anything like that, there is a little bit more of a hump back here in the rear. And another noticeable difference is all around, I would say the Razer Viper V2 Pro just feels just like a bigger mouse in hands. It definitely feels a lot wider. I feel like the curves are a little bit more aggressive on the Razer Viper V2 Pro, but when comparing these mice, the Razer Viper V2 Pro, it does feel like a flatter and wider mouse overall. All right, next up, one of my favorite mice, I'm going to be comparing the Ninjutso Sora versus the Dragonfly. They are pretty similar in size. I would say that the Ninjutso Sora, it feels a little bit thinner, a little bit more narrow. I would say the curves on the VGN Dragonfly are a little more aggressive than on the Ninjutso Sora. And of course, the biggest differences when comparing these two is going to be the Ninjutso Sora is more of a rear hump, and it makes it slope down lower from the rear hump to the front of the mouse. However, these are both great mice. Obviously, the Dragonfly has a little bit of an advantage offering that 4K, and I can't wait for the Ninjutso Sora to come out in the 4K version if it ever does happen. All right, next up, we're going to throw up the VGN Dragonfly against the glorious Series 1 Pro. These mice are also pretty similar when it comes to the overall size. The two biggest differences that I can clearly notice between these two is overall the Series 1 Pro, it does feel a bit skinnier than the VGN Dragonfly. The VGN Dragonfly just feels wider overall. And as you can see here from the back, the overall curvature from the top middle of the mouse to the sides, it is pretty similar, but the VGN Dragonfly just feels a little bit wider to me. The biggest difference to me that stands out when comparing these mice is I feel like the top middle hump is a lot more aggressive on the glorious Series 1 Pro, whereas the VGN Dragonfly just feels flatter overall on the top. The hump at the very top of the mouse definitely isn't as noticeable, it's not as aggressive, and it's not as high up off the ground. And another thing with the VGN Dragonfly is there's a bit more of a hump back here to give you more support in the palm, whereas with the Series 1 Pro, you just get this middle aggressive hump and then it tapers off more aggressively to the rear of the mouse. All right, and then another request that I've been getting a lot from people is wanting to compare the VGN Dragonfly to the Starlight-12. This is the medium version. I do feel like the Starlight-12 medium is a little bit of a shorter of a mouse. The biggest difference for the Starlight-12 medium is, as you can see here from the back profile, I feel like when you're at the top of the mouse on the VGN Dragonfly, it starts to curve in sooner and more aggressively towards the side of the mouse. Whereas overall, the Starlight-12 medium, it just feels a bit wider in the hands. The sides feel a bit flatter. They don't feel as aggressively curved as on the VGN Dragonfly. And the last thing when it comes to the differences of these two mice, on the Starlight-12, you do have a more aggressive center hump, whereas the center hump on the Dragonfly, it overall feels flatter at the top of the mouse. And then as you can see here, the Starlight-12 series has a very aggressive curve from the top middle of the mouse to the back of the mouse, whereas this one flares out a little bit more and it gives you a little more support with kind of a hybrid lower rear hump on the VGN Dragonfly over the Starlight-12. All right, and then last but not least, we'll throw it up against the Starlight-12, the small version. When it comes to the width of these two mice, when you go to the very middle of the mouse, the width isn't that far apart from one another. They feel pretty similar. The Starlight-12 small, it is a lot more narrow towards the rear of the mouse, whereas the Dragonfly flares out more. And as well in the front, the Dragonfly flares out a lot more towards the front. Another thing too, as you can see here, when you stack them up next to each other, it does feel like a lot shorter of a mouse. And especially due to the fact it has the same characteristic where it has that middle hump and it tapers off more aggressively to the rear. As you can see, overall, the Starlight-12 small definitely feels like just overall a much smaller mouse than the VGN Dragonfly. All right guys, so that wraps things up for the VGN Dragonfly. Again, I've been really enjoying this mouse. I really am liking it a lot. The fact that it does come in at the price that it does, and it has the option of the 4K available, I would say it's definitely worth checking out. When you compare it to the price of everything else on the market, it's honestly a really good deal and you're really getting a great value. You just have to keep in mind that, you know, once you pick up the 4K dongle, once you pick up the additional skates, once you do a battery swap, if that's something you do decide to do, the cost is going to go up and it's going to start getting closer to things like Lamzu and Pulsar and other mice that are on the market. However, I do still feel like it is really good value, and coming in at the price point around, I believe $56 is what the MOBA and the F1 Pro Max version you can pick up for right now is. And I believe that the F1 Pro version is a little bit cheaper. I think it was around $50, $49, something like that. I'll go and throw up prices on the screen here. But out of the box, I truly do feel like these mice feel great, and I do feel like they perform great as well. All right guys, so if you have any questions or feel like there's anything I left out, please let me know down in the comments below. Aside from that, if you did like this video and you're interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.